In the dark shadows, in the white cold, fearlessly we search for knowledge new and old. We drink the strong spirits and read the ancient tomes. The order of the Abracast. We are the brave and the bold. The Abracast. Occult, history, conspiracy, and violence.
Alright, welcome to the Abracast. I'm your host, Dr. John Towers. I'll be here with you for the duration this evening, and we're going to be picking up where we left off with our last episode. I wasn't planning on doing a bonus episode. This is only my third week back, really. Like, I can't just get right back into doing 3 episodes a week. But we are going to pick it up. Like I said, things are happening so goddamn fast. I can't stick with my boundaries and make the shows that I feel like I need to make. So we're going to have to do like a bonus episode. This will come out on a Wednesday probably, and we'll just get it out of the way so we can move on, to the, not the important stuff. Like, this is vitally important. Like, this might be kind of a joke, but it's a really serious joke. Like, we're talking about how a country went from in 1997, they were the third or second or first richest country in South America, to complete and total collapse by current year. This is serious. And if you're forward looking a little, or you have the right kind of reading glasses on and the lenses are all clean, and maybe you got a good buzz going, you can look into current events here in this country and see direct correlations, almost the same fucking exact thing. And I'm not being hyperbolizing. I'm not hyperbolizing. Anyhow, as always, I do have my vessel of the art with my weapon of mass destruction, the Jin Jihad, mixed up in it. So it's right here. It's ready to go. Spoiler alert, or, a little inside baseball. This is the same as the last episode. I'm just keeping recording, just doing a whole new episode. So we're going to just pick up exactly right where we left off. I'm in my same level of inebriation and stoneness, and all the articles are still lined up and ready to go. We're just going to get to them. So with that being said, let's start this evening's meeting out with a toast. Quiet. Here, no, let's do a loud. We'll do a toast. We'll say, "Here's to swimming with bow-legged women." So where were we at? What's wrong with this thing? Hold on. All right, good. All right, we're back up. We're back up. No need to panic, everybody. We're back up and running. Okay, so where we just let me get us all up to speed here with our timeline. 1992, Venezuela became the third richest country in South America, in their hemisphere. In 1997, interesting factoid for the evening, became the second largest purchasers of Ford F-150s. 2001, they voted for Lieutenant Colonel Hugo Chavez, who was a socialist president, and his platform was income inequality. So his platform was income inequality, and look what he did to his country. I mean, it's amazing. 2004, private healthcare is completely socialized, and our big topic of conversation last week, I think, was the Supreme Court was being packed. 2007, all higher education becomes, quote, free, unquote. 2009, socialists banned private ownership of guns, except government-sanctioned militias called colectivos. And we're gonna this evening, one of the articles we're going to read is about why the ramifications of this happening, of socialist banning private ownership of guns, leads to some pretty horrendous stuff, as probably it always does. 2012, Bernie Sanders praises Venezuela for their, quote, American dream, stating, these days the American dream is more apt to be realized in South America and places such as Ecuador, Venezuela, and Argentina, where incomes are actually more equal today than they are in the land of Horatio Alger. Who is the banana republic now, the piece states. Indeed, Bernie Sanders, who is the banana republic now? I had something to say about this, but I don't remember what it is. So anyhow, Bernie Sanders is just, he's just a loser, like, fuck this guy and all this. Maybe I wanted to say something about Horatio Alger. All right, 2014, opposition leaders are imprisoned. We did that. 2016, food, healthcare shortages become widespread. So we didn't really talk about the healthcare shortages specifically, but we did talk about food shortages. And I did kind of go on this little tirade or rant about just long-term food storage. But, there's a bunch of stuff that I failed to say. Water storage is probably even more important than food storage. And water storage is very difficult because it is very bulky. It takes up a lot of space and it's heavy. But again, just like with the long-term food storage or the emergency food situation, you should do these things in layers, right? A couple cases of bottled water, maybe some bricks of water set aside, cool, dark place, covered up. Have a rain catchment system maybe in place. Remember the crates I was telling you, like the military storage crates? And I said have one for the bathroom and have one for water. The water should have water filtration, water collection, which means, one of those emergency bathtub water bladders. I think they were originally used for, or are used for, hurricane situations. But you should probably have one. They're not very expensive. Water filters, zero water or Berkeys or whatever you got. You should have all of that. Also another thing that I forgot to mention, is medical stuff. That's another thing that I struggle for because, I've never been really shy about, the mental problems and stuff. Specifically, my wife is on a bunch of different psych meds and everything, and I have blood pressure problems. Can you believe that? I have a fucking high blood pressure problem. Anyhow, so getting the medicine and stuff is one of my weak spots right now. I'm working on it. I have a plan. It's just expensive to get, medicine. That's just the way it is. God damn it. Bullets, Band-Aids, food, long-term food storage, and bullets, should maybe have at least a gun in the house, if not multiple, and maybe one or two in the car, and, maybe one or two, buried in a secret location somewhere. And the bullets for all that stuff. Think about your pets. Have some food for your pets, if you're not planning on feeding them, scraps and all of that stuff. And medical supplies, there's a couple really great books, off the grid, what's it fucking called? God damn it. I'm going to have to run upstairs and find it. It's a survival medicine handbook. Get a couple, I guess you don't have to, I didn't like buy mine outright. I assembled them. Blowout kits, chest compression, or chest seals, Israeli bandages, bleed stop stuff. If you're interested in that, let me know, and maybe I can do sort of the same thing with the book of packing list or whatever. Anyhow, I feel like I gotta get into, we gotta go. Are we gonna go? Let's go. We gotta go. Let's fucking go. Venezuela's High Court dissolves the National Assembly. It's March 30th, 2017. We're going to get into this article on the other side. Well, when I left the Army, I stole my combat lifesaver bag. This bag is fantastic. And, the only thing that I can't really get, and I'm, looking at vet medical supply companies, is I'm having a hard time getting saline with the IV needles. I'm having a real hard time. But I got, a surgical kits, dental self-care, dental kits, splints, I don't know, whatever. It's where you separate the men from the boys. Surgical kits and dental kits, picks and mirrors and stabby things. So this is from CNN. It's called Venezuela's High Court Dissolves National Assembly, March 30th, 2017. In a surprising move, only they're surprised, I bet. CNN's the only people that were surprised about this. In a surprising move, the Venezuelan opposition is calling a coup. The Venezuelan Supreme Court has stripped the country's National Assembly of its powers. The court ruled that all powers vested under the legislative body will be transferred to the Supreme Court, which is stacked with government loyalists. And probably too many people. They need to find stuff for all these fucking judges and the reserve judges to do. This is that moment in A New Hope, in the original Star Wars movie, where Grand Moff Tarkin comes into the boardroom and he's like, the Emperor has, got rid of the Galactic Senate. And they're like, how? How are they going to rule all these systems? And they're like, the governors in charge of each system will rule, by fucking terror and Death Stars. It was the idea, I think. But that's what just happened. That's this story. That's what just happened in Venezuela. The ruling effectively means that three branches of the Venezuelan government will be controlled by the ruling United Socialist Party. The opposition has been taken out of the picture. Prominent opposition leaders are already calling the government of President Nicolas Maduro a, quote, dictatorship, unquote. Nicolas Maduro staged a coup d'etat. National Assembly President Julio Borges said on Thursday. What this ruling means is that for the first time, Nicolas Maduro has the power to enact laws, assign contracts, incur foreign debt, and persecute fellow Venezuelans. Maduro spoke about the ruling in a message broadcast live Thursday on the government's TV network. They only got one. They are giving me they are authorizing me enabled special powers that stem out of the state of emergency clauses in our Constitution. This is in order by the Supreme Court. It is an historic ruling, Maduro said. The ruling sent shockwaves across the region. The Peruvian government broke off diplomatic relations with Venezuela over the matter, recalling Mariano Lopez Chavarri, its ambassador to Caracas. In a statement issued by Peru's foreign ministry, Peruvian President Pedro Pablo Sinutzkuk called the court ruling an arbitrary measure that disrupts the rule of law and constitutes a breakup of the constitutional and democratic order. The Supreme Court ruling says the judicial branch will execute all legislative powers that normally belong to the National Assembly, which has had opposition majority since January 2016. Let it be known that as long as the contempt situation persists in the National Assembly, actions are invalidated. The Constitutional Court will guarantee that all parliamentary functions will be exercised by this court or an institution designed by it in order to safeguard the rule of law, the court wrote. The court declared the National Assembly in contempt last year for swearing in 3 legislatures from Amazonia's state. Their elections were deemed invalid by the court. Former presidential candidate and opposition leader Enrique Caporaes denounced the ruling while on a trip to neighboring Colombia on Thursday. In Venezuela, we have a government operating outside the Constitution. There's now a dictatorship in Venezuela. They have crossed the line. Scuffles broke out outside the Venezuelan Supreme Court building Thursday afternoon with anti-government protesters trying to storm the facility as National Guard blocked access. Some protesters yelled at the guards using expletives and calling them traitors to the motherland. Venezuela is facing a deep humanitarian crisis sparked by economic meltdown. Shortages of basic food products and medicines are all commonplace. Inflation is expected to rise 1,660% this year and 2,880% in 2018, according to International Monetary Fund. This is coming. I cannot believe these numbers. This is coming here. We are going to deal with this. Or I'm going to have a heart attack and die when I can't get my medication, so fuck it all anyway. An unprecedented move, especially for the socialist government. Maduro announced March 24th that his government asked the United Nations for help with dealing with Venezuela's medicine shortages, which have grown severe as the country grapples with this crisis. When I think about like my preps and stuff that I've done and what I've accomplished and what I have control over, the thing that drives me the craziest is my wife's psych meds. I mean, it's a disaster. It's going to be a disaster. And there's nothing I can do to prepare for that. Like, earlier in March, data from the country's central bank revealed Maduro's government is running out of cash. Venezuela has $10.5 billion in foreign reserves left, given that the country still owes $7.2 billion in outstanding debt payments. That's nothing. We're in the trillions now. Current year, America, we are in trillions of dollars of debt. You know, billions wasn't even an economic number. The concept of a billion is an astronomical term, like as in years and space and fucking the number of stars out there. Now we're in trillions of dollars of debt. It means Venezuela will run out of cash at some point. I mean, if they don't run out of cash, they could just print more, causing even more of the same, unless, I guess, until they can't afford paper or ink. Like, I guess that's when it'll stop. That should be a U.S. government T-shirt. We're not going to stop until we run out of ink. U.S. Treasury. The Organization of American States met Tuesday to address the political crisis in Venezuela, but member states fell short of finding consensus on the goal of imposing sanctions and demanding the release of political prisoners, ensuring instead a statement to keep on examining options with the participation of all parties in Venezuela to support democracy and the rule of law under the Venezuelan Constitution. So here in our timeline to Armageddon, the next stop is from 2017, Constitution and elections are suspended, to 2019, armed citizens massacred by own government. So this article is called Venezuela Extrajudicial Killings in Poor Areas. A pattern of serious police abuse goes unpunished. So besides the obvious, like, don't let authoritarians take over your government message, next we're going to be moving kind of into a 2A kind of chat. Remember in the last episode when I was like, this thing is going to completely just take over, like, is relevant to this. The removal of private ownership of guns is directly related to Venezuela extrajudicial killings in poor areas. A pattern of serious police abuse goes unpunished. This is from hrw.org. I'm trying to find a writer's name here. September 18th, 2019. It says, all right, so let's go. Let's just go. Let's just go. We're going to go. Right after this, we're going to go. HumanRightsWatch.org, HRW, Venezuela extrajudicial killings in poor areas. A pattern of serious police abuse goes punished. Washington, D.C., a Venezuelan police unit has been carrying out extrajudicial executions, otherwise known as murder, and arbitrary arrests in poor communities that no longer support the Nicolas Maduro government, Human Rights Watch said today. Since the creation of the unit Special Action Force of Venezuela, I'm going to attempt this. Fuerza de Acciones Especiales, or the FEAS. This is a little too close to fags for me, guys. FEAGS. The few guiones. As a branch of the Bolivian National Police in 2017, police will have a unit have engaged in serious human rights violations with impunity. Its abusive policing practices in low-income communities are consistent with a pattern of Human Rights Watch and Provena, a Venezuelan human rights group found in 2016, of widespread allegation of abuses by security forces in ordinary citizens during what is known as the Operation to Liberate and Protect the People, or Operación de Liberación Protección del Pueblo, or the OLP. In the midst of an economic and humanitarian crisis that is hitting the poor the hardest, Venezuelan authorities are resorting to egregious abuses in low-income communities that no longer support the Maduro regime, said, we know this guy, Jose Miguel Vivacano, an American director of the Human Rights Watch, in a country where the justice system is used to prosecute opponents instead of to investigating crimes. That sounds really familiar too. Look to your city police officers, everybody. Venezuelan security forces are taking justice into their own hands, killing or arbitrarily arresting people they say have committed crimes without showing any evidence. In July 2019, Human Rights Watch interviewed witnesses or family members of 9 victims of violations by the FAGs in Caracas, this state in the interior, as well as lawyers, activists, and journalists covering the alleged killings by that unit. Human Rights Watch also reviewed death certificates in 4 cases that were consistent with the sources' accounts by reports by local human rights organizations and independent media outlets. The methods used by the Special Action Forces, or FAGs, and the circumstances of the killings have, in the cases Human Rights Watch documented, are consistent with the pattern identified by the United Nations Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, or the OHCHR, and local human rights groups. Police and security forces have killed nearly 18,000 people in Venezuela in instances of alleged resistance to authority. Since 2016, Interior Minister Nestor Ravioli reported in December 2017 that there were 5,995 such cases in 2016 and 4,998 in 2017. Venezuelan security forces killed nearly 7,000 people in incidents that they claimed were cases of resistance to authority in 2018. In the first 5 months of 2019, according to their government figures. Imagine being killed for resistance to authority. What does that even mean? You know what it reminds me of is the fucking dorks in England that try to block the road with their retarded vests. And like, people have just been running over them and getting out of their cars and whipping their asses and stuff. That's resistance to authority, buddy. Obviously, the joke is it's resistance to the real authority. Nobody has yet compiled detailed information as to how many of these killings by security forces have been extrajudicial executions, but the OHCHR concluded that information analyzed by OHCHR suggests that many of these killings may constitute extrajudicial executions. OHCHR investigated 20 cases of people killed between 2018 and April 2019, in depth hearing nearly identical reports that the FAGs agent fatally shot young men during arrests in circumstances in which lethal forces were not necessarily to protect life. The UN agency concluded that, taking into account the profile of the victims, the modus operandi of the security operations, and the fact that the FAGs often maintain a presence in the community after an operation ends, the OHCHR is concerned that authorities may be using FAGs and other security forces as an instrument to instill fear in the population and to maintain social control. In all cases, Human Rights Watch investigated in depth the armed FAGs agents were just dressed in the unit's black uniforms. In several cases, they wore ski masks, arrived in a black pickup truck without license plate, and burst into homes in low-income neighborhoods and the agents often took family members of the victims outside before carrying out the killings. In some cases, agents stole food. Of course they did. Everyone's starving. They're eating fucking zoo animals and other items difficult to find during Venezuela's economic and humanitarian crisis. So this gives us a little bit of something to talk about. Not only are they fags, but they dress like Antifa. And we all know that Antifa are a bunch of socialist thugs. So it all makes sense. This is all clicking together. Click, 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 click. Like that roller coaster we talked about in the last episode. In every case of killings that were investigated, family members said that the fags manipulated the crime scene and evidence, agents planted arms and drugs or fired their weapons into walls, the old Vic Mackey move, or the air to suggest the victims had resisted authority. Don't resist my authority. That should be some shit t-shirts that cops wear. Don't resist my authority. After some killings, family members said that they had difficulty obtaining their loved ones' bodies, autopsy reports, or death certificates. In one case, an agent used electric shocks on a detainee. They beat and kicked him and covered his head with a plastic bag in which they had sprayed a chemical substance that made his face and throat itch and swell. Such treatment amounts to torture. Remember, we talked about torture a little bit in the last episode. The agent believed that men had stolen motorcycles belonging to a Special Action Force commander's wife. The man had told Human Rights Watch, "Wow, you stole my wife's motorcycle, bro. I'm going to kill you." In 6 cases, OHCHR documented those killed by the fags were government opponents or people perceived as such. Agents executed them during the raids after anti-government protests. Since January, many of these protests have been in support of Juan Guaido, the National Assembly president, who is challenging the legitimacy of Maduro's presidency. These executions fit the same pattern as most of the killings that Human Rights Watch reviewed, as well as those OHCHR documented. Most of the killings Human Rights Watch reviewed are consistent with the abusive policing practices that several security agencies have used for years. Between 2015 and 2017, Venezuelan security forces swept through low-income communities during the OLP. Participating security forces include the Bolivarian National Guard, the Bolivarian National Police, and the Bolivarian National Intelligence Services, or SEBIN, the Scientific Penal and Criminal Investigative Police, and the State Police. These raids resulted in widespread allegations of violations. Such extrajudicial killings, mass arbitrary detentions, mistreatment of detainees, forced evictions, destructions of homes, and arbitrary deportations. In November 2017, Venezuela's then Attorney General said security forces had killed more than 500 people during these raids. Government officials repeatedly said that the victims were armed criminals who had died in confrontations. In many cases, witnesses or families of victims challenged these claims. In several cases, victims were last seen alive in police custody. Human Rights Watch found no evidence that Venezuelan judicial authorities properly investigated any of the cases documented. Many victims fear retaliation if they report crimes or do not trust the authorities will investigate. In 4 of the cases, judicial or police authorities did not wait for the conclusion of a formal investigation, but declaring that the victims were definitely criminals. They were criminals. Venezuelan authorities told the OHCHR that 5 FAGS agents were convicted or charged, including attempted murder, for crimes committed in 2018. In that 388 agents were under investigation for crimes committed between 2017 and 2019, but OHCAR is reported that institutions responsible for the protection of human rights, such as Attorney General's Office, the court, and the ombudsperson, usually do not conduct prompt, effective, thorough, independent, impartial, transparent investigations into human rights violations and other crimes committed by state actors, bring perpetrators to justice, and protect victims and witnesses. Ombudsmen, I thought, were just like professional witnesses. Like, they just sit in the room to watch stuff. I could be wrong about that. I don't know. And I don't really admit that very often, so fucking Google search it and let me know what you find out. When the Special Actions Forces were created in 2017, Maduro said its purpose was to combat crime and terrorism and, quote, protect the people, unquote, from, quote, criminal organizations and terrorist groups promoted by the criminal right, unquote. Its parent agency, the PNB, is part of Venezuela's interior ministry, which Nestor Ravioli has led since 2016. Ravioli reports directly to Maduro. Instead of investigating widespread allegations of human rights violations by the agency, Venezuelan authorities have defended it. Human Rights Watch found on July 17, 2019, Maduro chanted, "Long live the fags," and expressed full support of the agency's daily work to bring safety to the Venezuelan people. We're just here to serve and protect everybody. We're just here to serve and protect. Human Rights Watch shared this information with the International Criminal Court prosecutor Fatou Bensouda, who in February 2018 opened a preliminary examination into the situation in Venezuela to determine whether a full investigation by the court is merited. In September 2018, the governments of Argentina, Canada, Chile, Colombia, Paraguay, and Peru asked the ICC prosecutor to investigate potential crimes against humanity in Venezuela dating as far back as February 12, 2014. Costa Rica, France, and Germany later added their support to this request. Do you see who's missing? We're going to get into this. Do you see who's missing out of this list? Why? These fags are killing, these fag killings are committed in the context of systematic brutality by the Venezuelan security forces that has gone unpunished in Venezuela for years. Vivacano said, "The lack of judicial independence only reinforces the cold reality that there is no hope for any credible accountability for these crimes in Venezuela." There's tons of this, but I have to move on. The links are going to be in the thing, you know. Come on, man. You know the thing. It's like Joe Biden. He's saying, he can't say the word God to his people. Like, he can't say the word God to leftists in a speech. So he goes, "Come on, man. You know the thing." You know the thing.
Give your GoDaddy manager.
Sorry about that. I guess I'm still kind of rusty. Come on. I made these too long. Or my sound engineer made them too long. Come on. All right. Well, here's a quick word from our president, the Catholic in chief.
America can back up on its feet and once again fight for the proposition that we hold these truths to be self-evident. Sounds corny. Not a joke. Think about it. We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women created by you know the thing. You know how we talk about it. Are we the people? Folks.
He's like, I can't say the word God in front of all these people. They'll kill me.
God by our Creator with certain inalienable rights. We've never lived up to that. We've never lived up to that. Thomas Jefferson, who wrote the words, never lived up to it. But we've never, ever before walked away from it.
Got big feelings. All right, well, I refuse to do another one of these episodes, so I've got to get through this shit right now. U.S. officials defend their Venezuela strategy after Maduro claims election victory. So what happened in just recently, 2024, Maduro loses the election by 30% 30 percentage points. I'm not a statistician, so I don't know what that means, but 30% seems like it's outside of the margin of error. So Maduro loses election by 30 percentage points and remains in power. So this is from the Miami Herald. U.S. officials defend their Venezuela strategy after Maduro claims election victory. This is Nora Gomez Torres and Michael Wilner, dated just a few days ago, July 30th, 2024. The Biden administration was on the defensive Monday over its policy bet that, now you also remember that one of my big staples dealing with Joe Biden is that every foreign policy decision he makes is wrong and disastrous. Every single one. Since like 1975. There's plenty of episodes about Joe Biden. You can go back and listen to them. I'm not late to this game. The Biden administration was on the defensive Monday after its policy bet that elections in Venezuela would dislodge strongman Nicolas Maduro the day after he was declared the winner, the presidential election, despite several irregularities and polls indicating his defeat. In a call with reporters, senior administration officials fielded questions about what the United States would do next, whether the Biden administration's negotiations with Maduro would, which included lifting oil sanctions and releasing prisoners, had failed to deliver the democratic change in the South American country. The officials defended those decisions as having made it possible for an opposition candidate to be included on the ballots, and said that they were prepared for the possibility that Sunday's elections would not lead to the change in Venezuelan's government. Quote, this is a quote from an unnamed official. This is journalism in current year. They quote someone and then just said when the quote's over, you'll hear it. I'm just going to do it. Fuck it, we'll do it live. I would like to underscore, quote, I would like to underscore that, quote, I would like to underscore that despite all the problems which we're discussing now, the fact that Venezuela did, in fact, hold an election yesterday which allowed an opposition candidate to be on the ballot and for the voting process to unfold only came about as a result of the calibrations that we've done with our sanctions policy over the last year, unquote, one of the officials said. Like, it seems like maybe I'm just old. You know, even Woodward and Bernstein were hacks. Like, fiction, like in movies where they're like, we got to get 2 sources on this, or like, I can't run with it until we get like 3, confirmed, identifiable sources. But nowadays, like, the media doesn't even pretend to lie. Like, they don't even pretend to, they just say shit like this. Here's a big, huge quote that's embarrassing. I would say it's embarrassing. They probably think it's pretty clever. But then it's just like, unquote, one of the officials said. That shit, I mean, it matters, right? Like, it matters. I think it matters. Meanwhile, they're throwing Catherine Herridge in fucking prison because she won't release her sources. I'm reminded of that great philosopher and politician Hillary Clinton when she said, "What difference does that make at this time?" Just a couple Americans dead, no city on fire, it's no big deal. The officials said that their principal concern was that the Venezuelan National Electoral Council announced the result that does not track with the data that we have received through quick count mechanisms and other sources, which suggests that the result that was announced may be at odds with how people voted. Huh. Where are we seeing that in the last couple of years? All this shit is at our doorstep. Friends, neighbors, countrymen, all of this shit that we've been talking about for the last 2 episodes is at our doorstep. It's terrifying. The Electoral Council under Maduro's control said that he beat opposition candidate Edmund Gonzalez 51.2% to 44.2% based on data obtained from 80% of the voting stations. Edison Research, a trusted pollster that conducts election day exit polls in the United States, projected that Gonzalez had won in a landslide of 65% of the vote. Earlier Monday, White House National Security Advisor John Kirby said that the United States would not rush to react to a result in the situation until the situation was clearer. We are going to hold our judgment until we see the actual tabulations of the results, he said, urging Venezuelan electoral authorities to release their data. The U.S. senior officials told reporters that it was still early in the process and that they were waiting for reports from international observers, and they did not say what the U.S. response would look like if the accusations of fraud were proven correct. Let me let you know what it's going to look like. Nothing. It's going to look like nothing. They're not going to do anything. Sunday's election, that's just my editorializing. Sunday elections was an important benchmark for the Biden administration that is dealing with Maduro, eager to reject the Trump administration's maximum pressure policy, which imposed heavy sanctions on the country's oil industry and rallied international diplomatic support for an alternate opposition-led interim government. Biden officials sought a different course. Under Biden, support for the interim government led by opposition leader Juan Guaido dwindled until the Venezuelan opposition got rid of it altogether. Biden officials also engaged in talks with Maduro representatives to negotiate the lifting of oil sanctions in exchange for Maduro agreeing to allow opposition figures to run in presidential elections that were supposed to be fair and monitored by neutral international observers. The carrots extended to Maduro, which included releasing two of his wife's nephews in prisons for narco trafficking in the U.S., and Alex Saab, his financer and frontman, accused of money laundering, were enough to make the Venezuelan leader return to the negotiation table with the opposition. An agreement was signed between the two sides in Barbados in October of last year with U.S. blessing. The Venezuelan opposition, a notoriously fractured movement, managed to unify under long-term Maduro opponent Mario Carano Machado, who ran a campaign so successful that Maduro's controlled Supreme Court did not allow her to be on the ballot. That's something else that we're seeing courts do, taking certain individuals off a ballot. That's democracy. That's democracy for you. Bending to the last minute international pressure, elections authorities allowed Gonzalez to be run in her place. As the harassment against Machado and her campaign staff continued, it was clear ahead of Sunday's election that Maduro was walking away from this agreement. For several months, the Biden administration had been facing criticism for supporting an election that many said was likely to be a sham, risking legitimizing the process. Several Cuban American politicians, including Senator Marco Rubio, was involved in drafting policies towards Latin America during the Orange Man administration, and warned that Maduro would use negotiations to buy time to get concessions from the United States. In February report, a U.S. intelligence community assessed that Maduro was likely to cling to power and not to concede defeat in a presidential election. Well, they're right once a year, twice a year now. The intelligence community says. That's laughable. On X, this is the first time I've read it where they say on X, formerly Twitter. On X, Rubio said Maduro regime carried out the most predictable and ridiculous sham election in modern history, and that's saying something, and blamed the Biden administration for easing sanctions as a part of a deal for elections in Venezuela. On Monday, Biden administration officials were asked if they regretted releasing Saab or if they thought their policies had failed. And responding to their critics, they revealed that the administration had also planned for the election not to lead to a power transition in Venezuela. We always knew there was a variety of scenarios for this election as they unfolded. It's just so funny. Like, we're used to dealing with the Biden administration says we're used to dealing with anomalous election irregularities, unquote. Biden official says. If they should have had a coordinated response, he said, noting that regional governments responded to Maduro's re-election announcement in various ways, from open rejection to calling for more information to open support. Meanwhile, he added, the United States is calling for electoral authorities and release of the official ballot counting act, which would take months and could be falsified. But the timeline is accelerating, and Maduro is already moving to threaten Macchiato and others, Farnsworth. The response needs to be immediate, or it's going to be too late. Some Venezuelan observers have said that there's still a chance that the election could lead to changes in the country because some members of the Venezuelan government might realize that Maduro staying in power after a fraudulent election will be an obstacle to seek international legitimacy and access to financial resources. A senior U.S. official said that these views might also inform U.S. policy. Quote, I think that Maduro authorities understand that if it is proven that they committed fraud in holding the election, that is not good for their long-term objectives of normalizing Venezuela's broader diplomatic and political relations in the region. The official said, and frankly, the official, it is good for their own political position within Venezuela. That is all part of the calculus here. So there is another article that I plan to read called Venezuelan Opposition Says It Has Proof its candidate defeated President Maduro in disputed election, but I've got to go. We're done here. I will include the link to that article if you want to check it out. And my name is John. I'm an Aries. I enjoy long walks on the beach. A jihad or two and some northern lights. That about does me in. See you next week. Actually, see you in a couple days. I'll see you in a couple fucking days. Tell him, Ella.
Are you interested in the occult, history, conspiracy, and violence? Learn more at abracast.com and visit the storefront for tarot cards, merch, and books. Support the show. Get access to the show archive at subscribestar.com. Thank you for listening to this episode. Send an email or visit us on social media to let us know what you think about this topic. And please remember to leave a 5-star rate and review.